So today we're going to talk about hormones. Let's start off by taking a look at some potential symptoms that you might have of hormone imbalance. You might experience symptoms such as weight gain, mood swings, PMS, PMDD, irritability, PCOS, low libido, excessive body hair, insomnia, and more. If you experience any of those symptoms, you are probably wondering how to fix them. But I need you to understand one thing first. The best way to fix your hormones is to figure out exactly where they're going wrong in the first place. For example, if you have estrogen-dominant symptoms and you just try to lower your estrogen, you might not get the benefits that you're looking for. It depends on why you have estrogen-dominant symptoms in the first place. It's possible that you have a normal amount of estrogen, but your progesterone is too low to balance it. In that case, you would see estrogen-dominant symptoms. It's also possible that you have a normal amount of estrogen, but too much of it is going down the wrong pathway. In that case, you're going to see estrogen-dominant symptoms as well. It's also possible that you have too much estrogen because your testosterone is being over-aromatized into estrogen. So as you can see, these are all very different scenarios for why your estrogen might be out of balance. And to be able to fix it properly, you first need to understand where it's going wrong in the first place. It sounds confusing, I know, but don't worry. In this video, I'm going to walk through a test with you called a Dutch. And through that, you're going to learn more about your hormones, how they work, what balances them, so that you can understand how to go about fixing them the right way. Through taking a look at the Dutch, I'm also going to be able to show you how all of your hormones are interconnected and related so that you can see how they impact each other. They are not isolated, and to really understand your hormones, you need to be able to look at the big picture and see how they all work together. So let's take a look. Dutch stands for Dried Urine Testing of Comprehensive Hormones, and in my opinion, this is the best test on the market. The reason why I feel it's superior is that it doesn't only show you your hormone levels, it shows you the metabolites and which pathways it's going down, like we talked about a minute ago. It's really important to understand what your hormones are turning into and which pathways they're going down. A great example of this, which I referenced earlier, is estrogen. There are 3 pathways that estrogen can go down: 2-OH, 4-OH, and 16-OH. 2-OH is the pathway you would like for it to go down. This is the healthier pathway. You're going to feel much better if your estrogen is going down the 2-OH pathway. The 4-OH pathway, however, is correlated to estrogen-dominant cancers. So it's really important to get a look at which pathways your hormones are going down. And if you do a blood test, it's just a snapshot of your hormones. It doesn't show you which pathway it goes down. It's not showing you the metabolites. And that's why I prefer the Dutch, the dried urine hormone test. So let's take a look at the Dutch together and we will walk through it step by step.
Hey there, so here you will see the Dutch complete. This is a sample test. This is not an actual patient, but this is going to be a great way for me to walk you through what this looks like. And I think it's going to help you get a better understanding of how your hormones work and all of the different ways they can go wrong and how we can help them to go right. So, first, you're going to see this key. This is going to show you how you're going to read the results. You can see the little stars on the left and on the right. Now, you kind of want to be in the middle of those stars. That's an average healthy range. If you are down by this purple bar, that means you are in a postmenopausal range. And if you are over this star, you're in a very high limit. And if you're below this star, you're in a very low limit. So in this sample patient, the first page, we get a big picture overview, a snapshot. And then in subsequent pages, it breaks it down much more specifically. So in this patient, we see very high estradiol and very low progesterone. What that is going to result in is estrogen-dominant symptoms. So those are the patients that say they have very heavy periods. They have PMS or PMDD. They have clotting, heavy bleeding, fatigue, irritability, anxiety, depression, all of those types of estrogen-dominant symptoms this pretend patient is definitely going to have. Now, let's say your estradiol is in a normal range and so right in the middle. but the progesterone is still very low, like we see here. You would still have symptoms typically of estrogen dominance, and that still would technically be an estrogen dominant picture, even if the estrogen was in a normal range. So when we talk about estrogen dominance, we're talking about it being more or less dominant than progesterone, because progesterone helps balance out estrogen. So if the progesterone is really low, even if the estrogen's in a normal range, it's going to feel high relatively and it's going to be dominant. What we want is for them both to be in the middle. We'd like to see both of these dials in the middle of those stars, which would mean that they're both in appropriate ranges and that they are both balanced. Then we have testosterone. And yes, women need testosterone too, just like men. We have far, far, far less testosterone, but we still do need testosterone. It's crucial for bone health and development and a whole host of other issues. So we do still need testosterone. Now, when we continue further down, we are going to see our adrenal hormones. So on the left, you see a chart of daily free cortisol pattern. What you want is to be kind of in between this high and low range. In the middle, you would like it to follow along with the peaks and valleys that are on this chart. So this patient has rock bottom cortisol all the way through. That's going to be quite different than if somebody has high cortisol in the morning, low cortisol in the afternoon, high cortisol in the nighttime. Those are both problematic pictures, but they're going to feel very different and they're going to be treated very differently. So it's important to know what your overall cortisol pattern looks like instead of just looking at, oh, it's high or oh, it's low. Now that's why the Dutch is superior to just a snapshot test. If you were just to do one serum cortisol draw, it's going to give you somewhat of an idea of what your cortisol is doing, but nowhere near as clear of a picture as if you had this chart to go by. So cortisol balances melatonin. So the reason why you want that cortisol to go low at night is because the cortisol going low will allow your melatonin to rise. Now, what does melatonin do? It helps you sleep. You need that melatonin. So if you have high nighttime cortisol, you're really stressed out at night, you're going to feel wired but tired, you can't sleep, you're anxious, you're going to have a really hard time falling asleep. That melatonin production is just not going to be where it needs to be. Now, we want a little bit of a peak in the cortisol right when we wake up, because that's going to help us wake up and get up out of bed. Now, this patient, they're right on the line, but sometimes people fall below that. And those are the kinds of people that typically have a really hard time getting up and getting moving in the morning because they don't have that natural cortisol spike to dampen that melatonin to get them up and out of bed. Those are the people that need to chug coffee to get out of bed typically. And then over here, we're going to see DHEA production. Now, the reason why DHEA is so important is it is kind of at the top of the chart. I'm going to show you on a different page that all these other hormones feed off of DHEA. So if your DHEA production is off, everything else is going to be off as well. So this is giving us the actual numbers. On that first page, we got to see dials and things like that. And on some other pages, we will see dials as well. But if you want to know the exact numbers in a snapshot, they are listed out on the second page. And they'll tell you, are you below the range? Are you above the range? Are you within the range? And they'll even tell you if it's the high end or the low end, but still within range. Okay, now this, page 3, shows us the hormone metabolites results from that previous page, but in dial form. And you're going to notice that DHEA is up at the top. So from the DHEA, we get androstenedione, testosterone, eticalanolone, or aldosterone. Testosterone can then be aromatized over to estrogen. There's 3 forms of estrogen, E1, E2, E3, and then that goes down different pathways, 16-OH, 4-OH, 2-OH, and then that needs to be turned into 2-methoxy E1 to help it get out of the body. So let's go back up top. Now, if we see a low DHEA production, then we're probably going to have a harder time making some of the hormones underneath it. You'll see that this client has low testosterone and low DHEA, which is no surprise there. We're also going to want to look at which pathway does that androstenedione go down. Does it go down the more androgenic pathway, or does it have that B5 preference? So these are all things that matter. Instead of just looking at, well, how much testosterone is there? How much DHEA is there? Which pathways are they going down? Because those pathways have different ramifications in treatment. All right, let's jump back over to estrogen. So things can get really complicated really quickly with estrogen. We already talked about estrogen dominance. Is it balanced with the progesterone or not? Now we want to look at which pathways is the estrogen going down. We do not want it to go down the quinone pathway. The 4-OHE1 can bind to and damage DNA. Now over here on this little pie chart, you can see where they would like you to be and then where you are. So patient percentages, it's expected to be between 60 and 80, and this patient's 46. So they are a little bit lower on their 2-OH. Now 4-OH, it's expected to be between 7.5 and 11. And this patient's 8.2. They are within that range. Now for the 16-OH, it's expected to be between 13 and 30. This patient's 45. So that's something that we would definitely want to pay attention to. Now we're back to the page with all the numbers. It's going to tell us if we're within the range, lower end, upper end, out of range, all that good stuff is on here. And this page is for the creatinine, daily free cortisol and cortisone, and cortisol metabolites in DHEA-S. S is the sulfated version of DHEA. Now here we see a bigger representation of what is going on with this patient's adrenal glands and cortisol production. So you'll remember from that first page, it was all kind of bottomed out and it was pretty flatlined. It didn't peak when it was supposed to. It was pretty low. Here that is, again, we can see it's low with a daily free and it's very low with a daily free cortisone. Now cortisol and cortisone can interconvert back and forth between one and the other. You'll notice on both of these, they are rock bottom. So this client definitely needs some adrenal support to help bring up that natural cortisol production to help them get up and get going and get moving and feel really good. A patient with this symptom picture probably experiences symptoms of adrenal fatigue, which are going to be lethargy, just kind of like all day low energy, apathy, potentially depression. It's just going to be really hard for them to get up and get moving and work out and eat healthy. And so it can be really hard for these patients if their adrenals aren't supported because they know what they need to do to feel better. They just don't have the energy to do it. Now, I love that the Dutch includes this. It's like a little mini oat test. Oat stands for organic acids. So here we can see some very important nutrients that we need in our body. And what we're looking at actually is the metabolites of them. So when these metabolites are high, that means that that marker is low in the body. So we see that their methylmalonic acid is within range, but let's pretend their methylmalonic acid was really high, which I keep seeing come back on the Dutch test that I have run on people. What that means is that they are B12 deficient. B12 is a really important vitamin, so we need to make sure that we have it in proper amounts. If we are not going to feel good, we are not going to be able to methylate well. It can throw off a lot of other functions in your body. Now, we see here that they have 2 B6 markers that are high. And again, those markers being high mean that that marker is actually low in the body. So B6 is going to be low in this patient. So they're going to want to increase their foods that have B6 in them and potentially supplement with B6 as well. So here we see neurotransmitter metabolites. Dopamine is very important for mood. Now this client's dopamine is at the low end of the range. So they might have feelings of depression or apathy. Their norepinephrine were in the middle of the range, so they were good there. Their melatonin, however, is in the low end of the range. So this client might suffer from insomnia, for example. And so doing things to help fix their melatonin production, like proper sleep hygiene, supplementation, I personally like to supplement with precursors to melatonin to see if we can help the body build its own melatonin instead of just supplementing with melatonin and then it never quite learns how to do it itself. And you'll also see their oxidative stress and DNA damage is at the high end of their range. Now remember, they had a preference on their estrogen pathway for that dangerous quinone pathway that can cause DNA damage. So these two are potentially related and definitely something that you would want to address. Now we get to see a very confusing looking chart. It's not as bad as it seems, but it tells you all of the pathways that everything goes down. And it also tells you what can be helpful for that pathway, what types of herbs, nutraceuticals can be supportive of those pathways, should those pathways be not functioning optimally. And then the last couple pages are just notes on notes on notes that kind of help you learn how to interpret this. I have yet to have a client read and interpret their own. Everyone, glances at it and goes, oh my gosh, it's overwhelming. Tell me what it means. So even though they try to help explain it to you, it is still overwhelming. And so it's probably best to work with a qualified practitioner if you are going to do the Dutch test. But you can order them yourself. You can just go directly to the company. You don't need a doctor. You don't need a practitioner. You are able to obtain this information freely and readily if you want to take on that challenge. If you don't want to take on that challenge and you would like some help with it, go to the link below in the description box. Go to the Work With Me page and click on Test, Don't Guess, and I will order it and interpret it for you. So I hope you enjoyed this video on the Dutch test, and let me know if you have any questions in the comment section below.
Okay, so now that you have a good understanding of your hormones and the metabolites and the pathways from looking at the Dutch together, your next logical question probably is, what can I do about it? Of course, part of the answer to that is going to depend on your individual hormones and pathways and what's going on with your body. I have different protocols that I implement with each hormone imbalance when I work one-on-one with my coaching clients. But no matter what the imbalance, no matter what I see on the test, and no matter who I'm working with, I always work on the same two things. And so I'm going to share those two with you today. These two things heavily impact your hormones, and without fixing them, you can't fix your hormones no matter what the issue is. These two things are gut health and stress. For gut health, I like to use the GI map to take a look at exactly what is going on in the gut of my clients. But again, there's a few general things that anyone could do to get started improving their gut health. One of them is to introduce some probiotics. I have a video on probiotics, so make sure you check that out if you'd like to learn more about how to choose the right strain for you. The next thing would be to improve your digestion. Again, I have a video on that, so you can check that out and learn more about the simple steps you can take to start to improve your digestion today. And the last thing would be to begin to clean up your eating. Eat more real whole foods, fruits, and vegetables, and avoid processed foods and refined sugars. Now, moving on to stress. There are so many things that you can do to relieve your stress. You could try yoga, journaling. Gratitude journaling is really helpful for most people. You could also go for some more walks. Then there's meditation. There's a lot of great free meditation apps out there that you could check out, like Calm and Headspace, for example. Now, if you find that your hormones are out of whack, I highly recommend working with a qualified practitioner that's experienced in hormone balancing. But in the meantime, you can always get started laying the foundations for health by improving your gut health and reducing your stress. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to hit subscribe and the notification bell so you don't miss any new videos that come out every Tuesday and Thursday.